And we're in. We're in it to win it, John. We're in it to win it. So this is an early morning podcast because we have busy lives and we have a busy weekend coming up. So we're actually recording this on a Friday morning, bright and early. If you can hear that in my voice, I got up way too early and I'm just now drinking my coffee. I know. It's almost like I smoked a cigar last night. I did buy a cigar yesterday. I felt I deserved it. Yeah, I haven't smoked it, but I bought one. It's a Maker's Mark. I love the Maker's Mark dipped cigars.
Cool. I've had rum soaked before, but I have some of these little ones. Here, I'll show you one. Let me pull it out and see. It's like, and I haven't. They've been sitting in here for.
Yeah, it's a cute one. It's a little. I like those. What do they call those?
This is it's like a torpedo or something like that, but then it's cut off. I don't know what the name is for. Anyway, we
would have to have Matt Smolik back on the podcast to let us know. He's the cigar aficionado.
It's a nub.
That's what I was thinking, but I didn't want to say because I didn't want to sound stupid. Which I mean, I should be used to that by now.
Well, Matt can talk to us about that because I've had these for a year probably and have not smoked one yet because just after smoking cigarettes for so many years, I'm always kind of hesitant to get that shitty taste in my mouth again.
Yeah, but that's the worst part. I love the act of it. I just don't like the taste afterwards because it takes like 2 days to get out of my mouth.
It does. Yeah, that's not the wonderful part about it. But I played golf with some guys and this was years ago. One guy did like a rum soaked. I mean, he didn't dip it in rum or anything, but it was in a humidor, I think, with a rum, some sort of a rum thing. And man, it was great. And this is terrific. We should do this. And then you try to replicate it, and this tastes like ass, And
exactly.
No.
Sometimes it works. So last night I actually made a lasagna. It's the first time I've actually physically made, and I'm not going to say from scratch because I didn't make the sauce myself. No. I took it out of a bottle, and I didn't make the pasta. It came from a box, but it's the first time I've constructed it with all these different ingredients. And I've always been hesitant because I've had some really good lasagnas that were homemade, and I've had some really bad lasagnas that were homemade. And this was the first time I'd ever done it. And I will be honest, and I even told Peyton, I said to Peyton, I think the only thing would make this better is if I actually used, along with the hamburger, I also used Italian sausage. That would have made it phenomenal. But it was exceptionally good. So I was a little proud of myself for replicating something like that. And I know it's not a true replication, but it is if you're reading a recipe, right?
It comes, it does come down to ingredients. So you're absolutely right. The quality of them. Lisa's mom, before she passed us, just made the Norwegian or something. I don't know. I don't remember her. What her background was, but she was not Italian, I don't think. She made this wonderful lasagna, and she would send me to this Italian grocery store to pick up the ingredients for it.
Nice.
I mean, everything was from scratch, and it was just amazing, So yeah, I have a soft spot for Italian, but I'm with you combining those two things, and I do the same thing with meatballs, with sausage and ground chuck or ground beef or whatever, because it just makes for a better combo, it seems like to me.
So speaking of from scratch, I would really honestly, we've been doing more and more of, you have to be careful about using that from scratch moniker, because am I really making it from scratch? Am I actually going out and getting, for example, if I'm talking about pizza, am I going out and getting the grain and milling the grain and, doing all of that? And there was a reason I used that as the example. So, no, I'm not doing that, but actually building something from high quality ingredients, as you said, and doing it from as basic as you possibly can usually makes for the best food. And we've been trying to do that with pizza, even getting those famous Italian tomatoes that you can only get from one part of Italy in the can, and you take that can and then you get rid of all of the juices, but you just take the tomato and you squeeze the tomato and then grind that up and use that as your pizza base sauce. Oh my God, that's so good. It's so
it makes
good.
such a difference. It makes such
It really
a difference.
does.
So we will not even just like spaghetti and meat sauce, which is kind of a go-to for us once every couple weeks or so, maybe once every 3 weeks. We don't do spaghetti sauce anymore. We will make our own, and yeah, it's usually canned tomatoes, or if they're whatever you get. Not, I would love to have regular tomatoes and do it that way, but that's not as
don't
realistic
have a garden
unless
yet.
you want them sitting around the house. Exactly.
Right.
You want them sitting around the house, and if I had a garden, I would have limes and lemons and bananas probably. So. That doesn't make for a good spaghetti sauce. Yeah.
You never know. You never know.
Yeah, maybe it would be good. You know what this needs? Pineapple.
Pineapple. Yeah, you know what? I'm one of those. I am one of those people that I am a true fan of pineapple on my pizza. I don't care what anyone says.
Me too.
I like pineapple on my pizza. One of my favorites.
It's a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, exactly. And one of my favorites actually from when we would order at the dealership, we would order pizza from Domino's. My favorite would be a thin crust. It would have jalapenos on it, banana peppers. I went with Italian sausage, but my boss went with Canadian bacon. And so I would have Italian sausage, and then the pineapple. Did I say pineapple already? We would have pineapple. Nope. If I didn't, great. If I had, great. So yeah, I love it. I love it. But anyway, so I haven't tried that actual recipe though in my pizza oven yet, but I'm looking forward to it. But going back to my example, one thing, and I'm taking this in two directions, because one thing I would like to try, I want to get my own mill, and I want to mill my own flour.
Wow.
But the biggest problem I have, and I don't know, and I would love feedback from folks out there if
is it like getting the oxen to pull the wheel so the wheel turns? Is that what you're
with? I've told you in the past that I make my own butter now, and I have a little handheld butter turn that's no bigger, really. It's like half of this bottle. And it's just got a little thing on the top. And so they make hand grinders, hand mills like that for grinding small amounts of flour. So I wouldn't mind getting my hands on one of those just to play with it. Probably get old, and I probably would only use it a few times, but I'd still probably really enjoy that. But the biggest problem I have is access to those grains, because and this is where I was going with people giving us feedback, because I would be interested to know one thing I really miss about both towns that I grew up. I usually tell people when they meet me, I grew up in Anoka. That's not accurate. I actually was born in a town in Minnesota called Mora, and lived there for the first 14 years of my life. And then we moved to Anoka, where I spent the rest of my formative years. But I spent a lot of time in Anoka. Yes. Long story, but two different places that I lived in Minnesota, both of which had small co-ops where you could go buy things in bulk. Sure. You could buy grains in bulk. You could buy anything you want, rice, stuff like that. It was like, I would, if you put it in today's vernacular, it's a prepper's paradise, because you had all of these dry goods in bulk. I miss those. We can't find anything like that around here. And I don't know if it's because they were smallish towns. I mean, Mora was a very small town, only had like 2,600 people at the time. And then Anoka, I mean, that had closer to 20,000 people, but still a small town vibe. So I don't know if anywhere else, if it's a small town thing, or if it's a northern thing, but with the co-op with all the dry food. Do you remember, did you have anything like that in your hometown?
No, we just had a farmers co-op, where they would bring grain and feed and things like that and have it ground. But that was nothing in the way of consumer facing. Yeah, and that's a great point too, because all the places were called a co-op, but when you were actually talking about the co-op, you're talking about what you're talking about.
So like REI is a co-op. I don't know. If you look, it even says it right here, REI co-op. So they had their own names, but they were all basically co-ops and maybe from those people that delivered grains. But anyway, so you didn't have a store like that. I used to call it the health food store. That was before I knew better.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that would be interesting. And I mean, it seems like it would be quite an effort to get. I mean, you don't need that much depending upon what you're making, but it's a lot of work to get, just a small amount, and the stuff that you can buy these days is so well suited for anything, coming for pasta or what have you. But I understand, and it's kind of fun to do some of that stuff on your own. I mean, I think from scratch.
Yeah, I'm going to put my conspiracy theorist hat on, and I think it's kind of fun to not just because it's fun to learn how to do it, just to do it, like you said, but it's also good to know how to do it if the shit hit the fan. I mean,
sure.
I was going to say, I for one still want to have my pizza even after the world crumbles.
Yes, I imagine you do, because no one will be coming over to your house for, hey, look, Nick has pizza. They'll be knocking on the door. So yeah, well, good thing you started grinding flour, Nick. Way to go. I'm eating Spam, and I have no one knocking on my door because nobody wants Spam.
But Spam can be really good. You got to go. That's why we should travel to Hawaii and learn all of the techniques behind making Spam.
John, where was Spam tastes good?
Can you? Well, of course you can. You're from Wisconsin. Can you tell me where Spam was originally created?
Oh boy, I'm guessing somewhere nuclear. No, I have no idea where.
Minnesota. That's where Spam originated.
What a shock!
Yeah, so you have not learned what my wife and daughter both know. Whenever I ask a question like that, there's usually two answers: Minnesota or Tennessee, and it's usually in that order.
Wow, that's good to know. Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah, I am quite acquainted with you in the fact that you will ask a question you already know the answer to. Well, John, let's see. Do you happen to know where Spam was created? Well, no, let's see. Where do they have nothing better to do? Minnesota. So that's right. Probably why.
SPAMsota.
We were busy. We would have invented it in Wisconsin, but we had a football team, so we didn't have to make Spam.
So yeah. I met some folks while I was traveling last week, and I was in Dallas, and these folks were traveling for business, and they were headed home, and I was headed from Dallas to Houston. So they live in Houston, and it was funny because we started talking, and I don't know how we got on the topic of what we did, but they found out that I did marketing for a living, and then they found out that they were in marketing, and it just kind of snowballed, and it turns out that one of the people that I was talking to actually came from Minnesota, and so we had a lot and very close to where I grew up too. Guess not in Mora. She knew where Mora was, but not Mora, Anoka. And so we were talking. Oh, that was bad. I'm getting a little warm up here. Hold on for a second, John. You fill in the gaps while I turn down my space heater.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think that was a euphemism. Hey, I need to turn down my space heater. I think that's right. A euphemism.
For what, though?
I'm going to let the audience's minds just run wild with possibilities.
I'm curious.
All right, continue.
I honestly, I met those people, and I forgot where I was going with that. To be perfectly honest, I got distracted by I've only had a third of a cup of coffee. It was during coffee talk.
They actually invented Spam, and they decided they were going to take it to Houston to bring it to fruition in the population, and the Houston population, which is I had no idea. That just
I
seemed like it
I
was
couldn't
where
have
it was
said it
going.
better myself. Yeah,
I think anyone could have said it better.
No, that's not true, John. One of my favorite sayings of yours, or one of the favorite things that I've been trying to use more often, is I used to ask you how you were doing, and then you would always answer, "If I were any better, I'd be you." I really, I really enjoy that. So you have a way with words, my friend. You should have a podcast.
I sure do. Don't have time.
Don't have time.
So talking about cooking, I want to segue to this because it's still cooking. We had some friends over earlier this week, and I did a pork shoulder. I think I mentioned I was going to do that, smoked it, and it turned out great. It was fabulous. Not bragging because I didn't do any of the work. I just threw it in there and spritzed it with some apple cider vinegar and water over several hours. Anyway, it turned out great. It was delicious. But I tried something new, and it was I'm trying to replicate something I had at a restaurant years ago, which was
that can never
corn. Yeah, corn, jalapenos, and cream. And it was like a side dish. Oh, man. And bacon. Nice. Oh, did I mention bacon? Yeah. Incredible.
That just makes it perfect right there.
Yeah, I know. So it's cream and whole milk, and then make a roux with a little bit of flour. And oh my gosh, it was just incredible. So I finished that up yesterday for lunch, had it for lunch 2 days in a row. And come on. So yeah, so if I like it, it's going to be gone at some point in time. Yeah. But anyway, it was kind of fun to try that. I like the jalapenos. Could have used a little more heat. That's the only thing about jalapenos. You can't tell. Our buddy, you remember Joe, our buddy who in Texas, who has just done so many jalapenos. He's a kind of a pepper wild man, I think, although he's never really admitted that. He had a really good rule of thumb for it that I never really knew about because I don't grow peppers. And that is, the more you starve them of water, the hotter they get. And I didn't realize that for jalapenos. Yeah. It kind of does, I guess, if that's what they're, whatever causes the heat. But people say, the heat's in the seeds. And I'm not sure that's accurate because I've had some without seeds that are holy crap hot as hell. But that's the thing with jalapenos. You can't tell. These were like green peppers as far as I'm concerned. They were not hot at all. So I was like, I want my money back. But, anyway.
Like everything else in life, I think it has to do with the size as well. The smaller they are, the hotter.
The hotter they are, well, then you get into other types of chilies too. What is it? Are you, habaneros, or I love those, but they're tiny usually, like that, or certainly smaller. But they can be really crazy hot or just medium.
Yeah. Have you watched? Speaking of not directly associated with peppers, I guess. Have you ever watched Hot Ones? Mm-hmm. On YouTube?
Oh yeah, love it. Sean, what's his name? Yeah,
love that show.
It's great.
Some of the reactions are just incredible. I watched Florence Pugh last night with Peyton, and Florence Pugh is I don't remember her character name, but she's Natasha Romanoff's sister in Black Widow. So, yeah, you just reminded me of that, and all of the Scoville units and stuff like that inside those hot peppers. If you folks have not seen that show, I would highly recommend that show. So the interviewer, it's one interviewer, it's one person, usually a famous person, sitting across from each other, and as the interviewer asks that person questions, they're going down the line eating chicken wings. But each one has a hotter and hotter and hotter sauce on it. And how many? I think there's like eight or nine. And so it gets more difficult for the interviewee to answer questions as they're eating more and more of these. And the best part is Sean, as John mentioned, Sean is a really good interview. Like, he digs deep. I mean, he does some.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And
he's awesome.
The interview starts out very normal, and you can see some of these people are fairly guarded, but by the end, they're just like throwing everything out the window. It's a great format. I think
one of my favorites, sorry to interrupt, one of my favorites is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters. If you get a chance, check that one out because they were doing shots. So not only Grohl was
shots of the hot sauce.
He was yes and no, shots of liquor. I think it was Jack, and which wouldn't surprise me, rock star, but it was just so funny because they were back and forth, and Grohl was awesome. Nothing bothered him. And then they do a shot, and Sean just got drunker and drunker as it went on.
I'm going to have to look this one up. I thought I saw it, but I don't remember it.
Sean is, oh my God, Sean is like covered with perspiration and hammered. And David, that was awesome, Sean. Thanks, brother. And they're hugging and Grohl had a concert the next night or 2 nights later, and he invited Sean to come, and he's like front row. And it was
that's awesome,
really a cool thing, and they connected really nicely. Have hilarious.
Have you read Dave Grohl's book?
I have not.
Oh, I would highly recommend it. I'm gonna hold on. You keep talking. I'm actually gonna go get it so I can show it on the video, and we'll talk about it for a second because I think it's. This book, I think I may have mentioned it before, so I apologize, but this book actually made me start laughing out loud in an airport while I'm sitting there reading it. I've never had that reaction before. So hold on just a second.
Well, okay. I'm going to keep rolling because he told me to, and I don't really care. Yeah, because if you think about it, laughing in an airport, seriously, you don't ever. I've read so many things that made me laugh out loud at an airport, but usually it's like a passport I found or something like that. Grohl is hilarious. He is a funny dude, has a great heart, number one, but he's just really got a great sense of humor. If you can handle the occasional F-bomb here and there. There it is. What's it called? What's the title?
It's called The Storyteller by Dave Grohl.
The Storyteller,
it's an autobiography, and it goes back to all the way back to childhood and his first band, and walks you through all the way through Nirvana and into the creation of the Foo Fighters, and then all the way to bringing his daughter on stage to sing. So it's really interesting, but really, really funny. I would highly recommend it. The Storyteller by Dave Grohl. Give me a ding. We're not a sponsor. So that's what I got to say about that. Now PoddiMouths has turned into a book club. I don't know if you guys know that.
I love that. PoddiMouths book club. I mind only reading these days, aside from any quick blurbs online. It's only going to be something like audiobooks. That's really all I take time to read. But I'm not in airports as much as you, like we used to be, or I used to be for years.
Right. Yeah, and that's where I get a lot of my books is at the airport, especially if I'm delayed or I just finished a book, which I was on my last leg of my flight, my 6 flights that I had to take last week. So I didn't go buy a new one, but I did finish another one, and it was I can't remember the title of it. I was trying to look it up, but I didn't buy it online. I bought it in a store. So, but it was about the rise of Tesla. So all the way back from the very first iteration before Musk even became involved, and how it came to be, and then walked all the way through. And I mean, it was not shying away from the negative stuff. I mean, it was saying, here are the highs, here are the lows. This is what Elon did. This is what he shouldn't have done. This is why people quit. This is why people started working for him. All of it. And it was really well done. And you have to remind me next time we record to get the book title. It's downstairs, so I don't want to. Cool. I don't want to go take that much time to go downstairs and get it.
Well, where did Nick go? He's getting in the next book club iteration, so we're not going to be able to. Yeah.
This book took me, and folks, I before I say how long this took me to read, I don't read books quickly. I read books, and I read a lot of books, but I do not read them quickly, because I'll read like 2 chapters and set it down, and then go to a different room and then read 2 chapters from another book. And then it might take me a good, month or 2 to read one single book, but that means I'm usually reading 3 or 4 at a time. So it's, this book I finished in 3 weeks. And then that Elon Musk book I finished in 2 weeks. And I only read usually when I'm on an airplane. So this one I did, the Dave Grohl book, I did read at on the weekends and stuff too, because it was just that good.
On behalf of the entire population, let me just thank you for not reading while you're driving. Because I see some people still today reading books while they're driving.
Oh yeah, that's stupid.
The worst was watching somebody, true story, knee on the steering wheel on the interstate, 80 miles an hour, eating Chinese food out of a to-go container.
Wow, that's talent. That's absolute talent.
Yeah, I don't think they were using chopsticks, but it could have been.
Well, that's good. I mean, chopsticks would be a little bit more difficult. So speaking of, I do read books while I drive, but it's Audible. There is this thing called Audible. You can't. Well,
that's different.
I was telling. It is and it isn't.
Not holding up a book.
It's not holding up a book. No.
Yes.
But I was telling someone yesterday. I'm looking at it right now. I have 94 books in my Audible. That sounds like, to me, that's a big number. I'm sure there are a lot of people that have more, but I have 94 books in my Audible.
And I've
read a lot of them. I've probably read half of them. I've probably read half of them.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, because I do. I subscribe, so I get a credit every month, and so I'll go and sometimes I'll forget to get some for a few months. So I'll have like 3 or 4. So I'll go and I'll buy 3 or 4 books. And then they'll just sit there until I get around to them. And I honestly have been reading a lot less because I don't drive as much as I used to. So now because I prefer this type of book.
Yeah.
But anyway, enough about me. John?
Awesome.
A little bit more about you.
I like it.
Book club. That's the end of PoddiMouths book club.
You have been doing a lot of traveling, and you do connections. Because, it's been a long time. Gosh, I can't remember the last time. It would have been Detroit when we lived in a hub city for airports. And that was great. Before that, it was Chicago. But since then and before that, it was always connections. Every time we take a flight, and Nashville is like that still for you. For the most part, it's every flight's a connection. And that makes it tough sometimes because you are getting the extra time that it takes, and it's hours. It's usually an extra 2-3 hours rather than if it were a direct flight.
It is. And I'm hoping that with Nashville growing as much as it has, and with the airport being completely renovated. I mean, it's usually you have sections of an airport that are being redone. This one is pretty much going from the bottom up, or top down, whatever you want to call it. Depends on, are you a glass half full or glass half empty? I think more like an engineer. I think more like an engineer. I look at a glass that's twice as big as it needs to be. Anyway, I'm hoping that changes. But the only one that does fly direct anywhere, and it's just because they are not a hub and spoke, is Southwest. And I don't like Southwest. I'm not a big Southwest fan, but
I like them. And if the choice is connecting, and I know, and believe me, I for years flew Delta and United because I like the status and I like to be able to bump up to first class, and I liked all the blah blah blah. But I dislike connecting if I can avoid it. And so we've flown a lot from here. When we go north to Wisconsin, we've flown a lot on Allegiant now out of Punta Gorda, which is a little tiny airport, to actually up to Rockford, Illinois, also a little tiny airport comparatively, and very nice airports, both of them on both ends. But it's so nice to just go from one to the other and not have to connect through Chicago or Minneapolis or wherever.
Yeah, and for it, there are a lot of factors too. Cost is one of them. Yes, Southwest can be cheaper, but not significantly enough for the hassle that I have to go through to get. Because Nashville Airport is not set up very well for Southwest. Just when because it's so tight. Unless you get into the new terminal, and the new terminal is fantastic. If I knew I was flying out of that new terminal every single time, I would probably fly Southwest more, but it's not. And like you said, the status is a big thing, and part of with United specifically, Because I will say a lot of times Delta might be a little bit cheaper, but as you were pointing out, time is one thing. Most of my work is done in the central part of the country. So for me to fly Delta, I have to get on a Delta flight, fly to Atlanta, and then fly back to wherever I'm going. Whereas
I've
on
always
United,
been against that. I've always been against that backtracking. Because it just does not make common sense to me. And I've done it before, and you have too. But we do not like that.
No. So with United, I fly to Houston, Denver, or Chicago, and then out to wherever I need to go. So I don't mind that hub and spoke. That said, very rarely, even with Southwest, is flying direct to some of these places. There's still quite a few that aren't, because I'm flying from Houston, for example. Houston, I can fly direct to Houston. I can fly direct to Dallas. But most of the time, my visits are another, especially if I'm flying into Texas, are another flight to a small airport that only services maybe two airlines. And it's usually like one I flew out in Kansas. The only airline that landed there was United. So I am originally I had looked because I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I travel? Okay, fly here and then land in a larger city that's an hour away. And then I found out through United, oh my God, I can actually go to that city and be right next to my hotel. That was fantastic.
And what a lot of people don't get about Texas is, because they'll say, well, fly into San Antonio and then you can drive to Midland or whatever the hell it is. And
no, you can't.
Texas is crazy like that. It's just, well, I'll just drive. It won't be. How far can it be? It's only like this on a map. And it's 7 hours later. You're, holy crap. I should have just spent another night in somewhere else.
Yeah, usually when I work, for example, with a dealer group, usually each store is within relatively within a let me start that again. Their stores are usually spread apart, and there could be few hours between each other, but they're evenly spread out, and it's not that much. Usually, I think the most I've ever gone is 4 hours between a store, but there's stores in between, so it's not like that's the total distance. I worked with a group in Texas where they had one store in El Paso, and then they had another store in the Rio Grande Valley, which, if you look at a map, just go to El Paso and then drive. It's an 8 hour drive. It's an 8 hour drive between the two stores.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's amazing. It's just crazy. But of course, the way I do it, I've got to fly to Houston, then fly to El Paso, then fly from El Paso back to Houston, then Houston down to the Valley, and then back to Houston, then back home. So it's a pain in the butt. But here's the other nice thing about it. Right now, I'm trying to get my status. I'm trying to keep my status. So multiple legs actually adds. So instead of only getting, because they only give you one, so one leg counts for each one of these, and I have to have 36 in a year. I'm already most of the way there. It's only 3 months into the new year. So that's one thing that the legs do help with, because I don't fly far enough to just depend on the miles to get me to that status.
That was me too. And so, I'm with you. And it's and people who don't fly a lot don't really get status. Those of us who do or have, we do. That's not only does that get you potentially bumped up to first class occasionally, but it's early boarding, and if there's a delay, you get first crack at new flights, and there's just a lot that goes hand in hand with that. And if you fly another airline, well, mileage too, but if you fly another airline and you don't have status, you suddenly recognize the difference of having it versus not, because otherwise you're just one of the cattle,
Yep. And what I mean by mileage, folks, too, is it's a travel hack. One of the biggest benefits for traveling for work is the fact that you get to accumulate points, and mileage equals points. And I fly. One of the reasons I chose to be more of a United person than any other airline, even though it's not necessarily the best, is it ties into Marriott, and I'm a Marriott person, which ties into National. Well, National actually is Delta, but they all kind of tie together and they all work together. And that means that at some point I can take a vacation and pretty much not have to pay a dime for travel. I won't have to pay for a hotel. I won't have to pay for flights for my family. It's a big perk.
Yep.
We did an entire week-long Chicago trip. We flew from Nashville to Chicago, stayed at a really nice hotel in downtown Chicago. We had to pay the taxes. That was it. It was $100 for all of it. For the flights, for the hotel, for the rental car, everything. It was great.
Yep. Well, you're preaching to the choir. That is absolutely a big deal.
And your status means you get points faster, is kind of my point to that, So I'll get 3 times the number of points based on my status than someone who doesn't do that and is just a normal member. So that's your lesson for today, folks.
Cool thing. That's it. Make sure you get status.
Status is wonderful. Status is wonderful, and then until you lose it. But then again, if you don't travel,
the only thing better than status is not flying.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I was going to say is if you don't have status and you don't travel enough, don't worry about it because you don't want to get it because that's
exactly.
I am known from my coworkers as a boozy SOB, a bougie, not boozy. I'm boozy too. That's a given. A bougie SOB because. It is. Is it really? Is it? Come on, John. Really?
No, just kidding.
But I am the bougie one. I like nice things, and not that my coworkers don't. So don't you? I'm hearing you guys. You call me the bougie one, but I know what you guys are like. You enjoy traveling with me.
Yes,
but
they do.
Here's the thing: the downside of being bougie, as John mentioned earlier, the downside of being so bougie is when I don't get that bougie, when I don't get the benefits of having my status. Oh, I'm miserable. I am a miserable son of a bitch.
Crotchety.
I'm crotchety. Yep. So on that note, John.
It's a good note.
It is a good note. Folks, we're going to call it quits for today. I think we've ended on a semi-high note. My crotchety ass, whatever. But head up to PoddiMouths.com to hear more of our crotchetiness or my bouginess. John will be there as well. I'm sure you guys kind of like him too. I don't know. Wouldn't have a podcast.
Whatever.
No, I appreciate really appreciate the fun that we've had over the last 4.5 years, John. I really do. This has absolutely been a blast, and I'm looking forward to another 4.5, 5 more doing this podcast. And I know, honestly, we don't have very many listeners. It's not about that. It's about you and I getting to just chat and have fun and just BS all day long. Not all day. I wish we could do it all day long. If you find it in your heart to pay for us to do it all day long, this is what I would make my living doing this.
Me too.
I should have been a radio announcer. But anyway, head up to PoddiMouths.com, get all of the information up there. We haven't sent out any merch lately. So if you feel so inclined, get some merch. I'm about to go buy some because Peyton actually asked me, Dad, where did my PoddiMouths shirt go? And I'm like, honey, you outgrew it. Well, I want another one. I need another one. So I have to go order my daughter a new shirt. I'm going to order myself. I'm actually wearing mine under my my shirt today. And it all you see is the microphone. The words PoddiMouths gone. I've worn it that much. So I need a new shirt. I think all of you need new shirts too. Or a hat.
You do.
Hats. Yeah. More the PoddiMouths hat. Anyway, folks. Have a fantastic week this week. I hope this podcast finds you all well. That's how I like to greet my emails. So I'm going to greet all of you like that. And, we'll see you next week. John, talk to you soon.
See ya.